Welcome to the Michigan BEAD Breakdown webisode series from the Michigan High-Speed Internet Office, or MIHI. This series is focused on helping Michigan residents, businesses, local and tribal governments, and community organizations understand the BEAD program and what it means for communities across the state. Our goal is to provide clear, reliable information and help answer a question many Michiganders are asking: where's my internet?
Welcome back to the Michigan BEAD Breakdown. I'm glad you're here with us again. Each episode, we take a closer look at different parts of the BEAD program so you can better understand what is happening and what that means for your community. I'm joined today by my co-host, Aaron.
Great to be back together, Simone. Looking forward to our discussion today.
Great to have you again. So last month, we covered the basics of broadband. We explained what it is, compared the main technology types, and broke down key terms like speed, upload and download, and latency. We also introduced the broadband nutrition label and how it helps people understand their internet service. So this month, we're shifting from technology to process. We're going to walk through the permitting process and talk about how it affects the BEAD projects across the state. Permitting plays a very big role in how quickly broadband can be built, so understanding it helps explain why some projects move faster than others. And hopefully today's conversation will help you answer the question, where's my internet? So to help us break this down, we're joined today by our guest, the MIHI Permitting Manager Lindsay, who will share insights on how permitting works, common challenges, and what is being done to keep projects moving forward. Welcome to the show, Lindsay.
Good morning, Simone. Thank you for the invitation to be here today.
Lindsay, we're excited about the conversation and thought maybe a good place to start might be by defining permitting. What exactly is permitting and why is it even necessary?
Sure. So the permitting process is a sequence of approvals and clearances that are necessary for a broadband provider to build the physical infrastructure that gets people their internet. It means navigating multiple layers of government oversight to ensure that broadband deployment is safe, legal, and environmentally responsible. There are three main layers that we navigate through. The federal clearance includes an environmental review process to ensure that these federally funded projects comply with the National Environmental Policy Act. We shorten this to NEPA, and as well as the National Historic Preservation Act. Historical and cultural reviews are conducted, as well as some level of environmental review to determine effects on local ecosystems, wetlands, and endangered species. The second layer we have is the state and local approvals. That includes working with agencies such as the Department of Natural Resources and the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, which is EGLE. Right-of-way access has to be granted so that the broadband provider can use public roads and highways. County drain commissions are responsible for protecting their drains, and they have a permit process. Sometimes local governments have zoning laws and safety codes that apply to broadband projects. And in Michigan, we also have the Metro Act, which is processed at the city, township, and village level by that municipality's clerk. The other layer we have includes permitting for things like railroads, bridges, utility infrastructure that includes things like utility poles.
So sometimes we hear permitting described as a process. Why is that? And who requires this process?
So permitting is described as a process because it's not a one-time request permission, get the permission, and go do the work. It's generally a sequence of steps to move through a project from design to completion of the work. There's responsibilities during design, during construction, and after construction. Permits require gathering data, submitting formal applications, undergoing reviews, addressing feedback, and then getting that formal sign-off, sometimes from multiple entities. Government entities and regulating bodies, such as road commissions, are responsible for safeguarding public resources. And so these permit processes are mandated to protect public interest with the authority granted by federal or local law to that permitting agency.
it sounds like it might be complicated from time to time. What makes the process more or less complicated or extends the length of time in the permitting process? Is it like a linear bunch of steps where A, B, C happen, or is it multifaceted where many things are happening at the same time?
It is definitely not a linear process. Permitting begins during the network design phase. Engineers want to develop a network to deploy internet infrastructure in the most efficient manner possible. And that means being aware of hurdles along the way that can sometimes be avoided with network design. So it starts even at that process. There's a lot of coordination issues with permitting, considering overlapping jurisdictions. And these internet deployers are meeting hundreds of laws while they're going through their construction. Sometimes avoiding one hurdle can turn the route right into another. And the complexity of the process rarely makes it a straight line. It's most permitting agencies have their processes designed to look like a neat step-by-step checklist or flow chart. But because there's so much concurrent work happening and a lot of back and forth between the agencies, it really depends on the type of permit.
Okay, so you mentioned that the process falls within the network design for the provider's process, but where does permitting fall within the broader BEAD timeline?
So permitting processes started before the final proposal for BEAD was even accepted, because the MIHI office began gathering information. The potential subgrantees were gathering information from federal agencies. They started conversations with agencies within the state, such as the State Historic Preservation Office, DNR, and EGLE. And they were, MIHI was also reaching out to local governments through the MTA and MML, the Michigan Township Association and Michigan Municipal League. A majority of the work falls in between that awarding the grant phase and the actual construction. But the National Environmental Policy Act requires that an environmental review be done before construction. That has started for most of our broadband deployers because it is a time-consuming process that, again, feeds into what their design may look like. So that's already started for many of them. And since so much of permitting feeds into that network design decisions, many of the broadband providers have also already reached out to other permitting agencies, again, such as EGLE and DNR, just to make sure they are avoiding any of these hurdles that they can avoid that will increase cost and time.
In one of our past episodes, we talked about the different technology types in the BEAD program. There's low Earth orbit satellite, there's fiber, there's fixed wireless. Do the different technologies affect what kind of permits are required, or is there a one size fits all kind of permit depending on technology? How does that work?
It would be nice to have a one size fits all, but it definitely does depend on the type of technology used. Different technologies trigger different laws and regulations. So the satellite technology in Michigan's BEAD program is not expected to have any ground disturbance, which means no concerns with wetlands, endangered species, or need for right-of-way permissions. Fixed wireless may only have ground disturbance if a tower is built for a project. And then there's buried fiber, which carries a heavy permitting burden as broadband providers work among multiple jurisdictions for this, and sometimes they're getting multiple permits for the same stretch of land. Aerial fiber requires coordination with utility pole owners as well. And while there's less chance that they will disturb underground, historically sensitive areas, that utility pole agreement with the utility owner adds another layer of permitting.
Lindsay, what are some things that MIHI is doing to help streamline this process?
MIHI is acting as joint lead agency for NEPA in a way that helps reduce some of the burden on the broadband providers. And it helps standardize the documentation that we're sending to the federal government for a more streamlined review process. The MIHI office also has been working with state agencies for more than a year now to ensure capacity and expertise. We're bringing a high number of broadband permits to the state agencies through BEAD. And we wanted to make sure that those agencies were equipped with the right tools to handle those permits. There have also been technical permitting roundtables for the broadband providers to make sure stakeholders on each side understand the goals. It allows the permitting agencies to have a chance to get in front of the broadband providers and also a chance to better understand the projects that will be coming their way. Through the roundtable format, MIHI has asked other permitting agencies to present information to the subgrantees what types of questions to ask and what types of information should be included in permits to make them more efficient to process on their end.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot that's already happening, that's already been done. Are there additional best practices or suggestions that you have for specifically for broadband providers with regard to implementing their permitting requests or getting the permitting process continued or initiated, depending on where they are?
I think I can answer that question across the board with one word: communication. We have encouraged broadband providers to reach out early and often. We want them to know who to contact within each community. And communication is such an important step to keep the process moving along. Each agency is going to have different pieces that are important to them to make things efficient. And our broadband providers need to be communicating with those agencies, and the agencies need to be communicating with the broadband providers to make sure that both sides understand what's expected so that the application comes in full and correct the first time.
Makes sense.
So what is the local government and municipalities' role in this, and how can they help?
Well, if there is a designated broadband liaison within the community, MIHI would like to be able to pass that information along to broadband providers. A single point of contact at the county or city level can be a great resource when a provider is unsure who to contact regarding a permit. Local clerks will be processing Metro Act permits. It is a permit that many municipalities may not have seen before, or possibly just not in a long time. We're happy to provide information about that process and point local governments in the right direction if they have questions. We have been working with some of the local communities to provide the information across the state in the best way. So we will have more information about that coming out later this year. If communities have make-ready timelines or dig once resources, that would be something helpful to share so that the broadband providers have those policies in hand while they're putting their permit applications together. And again, MIHI is happy to provide contacts for that as well.
Our audience, Lindsay, as you know, is pretty diverse. We've got general public watching, maybe some of whom serve in their local government, in their municipality, whatever that means. And of course, there's broadband providers watching too. Is there anything else that you think anybody in our audience should know about permitting or how it works in Michigan?
I think it's important to realize that the process timelines can vary by each organization. Federal permitting can take 270 days. Some local permits can and are turned around within a day or two. Some take longer. Communication and planning upfront saves time. But the purpose of the permitting is to give the agencies a chance to ensure public resources are protected. Some of the agencies are elected bodies, some are appointed, and some, such as railroad utilities and pole owners, can be privately owned. I think it's also important to note there is a 4-year construction clock that has already started for the BEAD broadband providers. So if you're wondering where your internet is, there's that clock right there. But also if permitting agencies are feeling pressure from the broadband providers, that's part of their push, is to make sure that they meet their construction timelines and the grant agreements. There's a permitting guidebook on the MIHI website in permitting resources for anyone who wants to learn more about the types of construction deployment that we're expecting in Michigan. The permitting burden doesn't make one type of technology better than the other. It's just different processes for different technologies.
Right. Right.
MIHI's goal is to serve every BEAD eligible location, and local units of government can play a vital role in achieving that universal connectivity and bridging that digital divide in Michigan.
What is your favorite thing to do in Michigan when you're not managing permitting?
We have a lot of lakes in Michigan, and I enjoy spending a lot of time on those. I have been known to paddleboard even when good chunks of lakes are frozen.
Wow.
Well, I think that probably is a good place to wrap for today. Just want to say thank you, Lindsay, so much for being here and walking us through all things permitting. It's been incredibly educational and resourceful. Thank you for being here. Simone, thanks again for a great discussion. And I just want to say to our audience, thank you for joining us for the Michigan BEAD Breakdown. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for watching the Michigan BEAD Breakdown, presented by the Michigan High-Speed Internet Office. We encourage you to stay connected and stay informed as the MIHI continues working toward reliable high-speed internet for every community. For the latest updates on the BEAD program, construction timelines, and available resources, visit the MIHI website at www.michigan.gov/MIHI. While you're there, please sign up for the MIHI newsletter to receive emailed updates as the program moves forward. If you have questions or want help finding information specific to your area, you can contact the Where's My Internet team at 517-648-5156 for Lower Peninsula residents or 906-235-6411 for Upper Peninsula residents. Be sure to like and subscribe to the Leo YouTube channel to stay up to date on new episodes of the Michigan BEAD Breakdown. Until next time.